Okay,
Yes.
cool. We're on. Hello, everyone. Hello, Dan.
Hello.
We're doing the Q&A.
Yes.
It's a day late, and I'm sorry about that. That was because I, at the weekend, was doing an eyeball making course, and I really wanted to finish all my eyeballs before I couldn't do them with the teacher anymore. I'll just show you one. But it meant I got back really, really late last night, and my head wasn't in the game. So we're doing it today instead. Sorry about that, but we've got lots of very good questions. Shall I start with them?
Yeah, go for
it. Okay, so let's start with so Jonathan Phillips, actually, this might be something we circle back to once we've got through some of the easier to answer questions, but he commented on our last Q&A on YouTube, which you can do, by the way. If you have a question, you can comment on the YouTube videos. And Jonathan asked, I think many of us want to hear more ideas and philosophies around cities and how they can be built better. What are the mechanisms for creating better cities? Is this layout and zoning, transportation, mixing businesses, living, parks? The whole idea is very intriguing and has so many parts. There have been many articles over the years about more green cities, but would love to hear your thesis. Do you want to start? We can start with that one. It's a great thing to start with.
Yes, but it's not a question. It's a 6 weeks project, really. A few years ago, and you'll remember this, Freya, we went to Göteborg, which we in England say Gothenburg, which is wrong, but that's how we pronounce it, in Sweden. And we were invited by the mayor to host a talk on making a city for children, i.e. making Gothenburg a city that was amenable to children.
By the way, I think those are both wrong. I think we say Gothenburg and they say Göteborg.
Okay. Well, yes.
You have to pick one of those two. You can't make up your own.
All right. Anyway, the upshot of it was, yes, we went and did a talk on how cities work and what makes them difficult. So I think it's, yes, I'm not quite sure how to go about this because answering the question is important, but in the time frame we have, it's difficult. Well, if I could say, one concept that is critical is if you're designing a home, we did an enormous amount of research on what made homes feel good. And a great deal of it came down to making defendable spaces. If you're in what your intuition tells you is a defendable space, you feel much better.
By the way, are you on the right internet? Because you're breaking up a bit, your image.
Ah.
Sorry, it looks okay right now, but it was...
Yeah, I'm on the right one.
Okay, sorry, carry on. Defendable spaces is what makes people...
Yeah. Yes. But in practical terms, even if we get that right, there's a great deal more that makes a city amenable to people. Cities like London and Paris, and of course all modern cities, were designed for vehicular traffic. Even though they were designed before there were motor vehicles, they were designed for gigantic numbers of horses and carriages. Medieval cities that weren't, in the very few that exist, with their tiny streets and alleyways, work much better because they're much more entertaining to walk around. So there's all kinds of issues to be gone into. And what I would like to do is do a special session on cities
I think so too, because I think we've talked about this a little bit before, and I think I made the same point to that point, which is that I definitely agree. Like having those little alleyways that go up and down and around corners and over bridges and under buildings that are connected is much nicer to walk around. But I would feel more uncomfortable as a woman at night walking alone in a city that was like that. So that would have to be something that was addressed as well.
Yes, indeed. Indeed. And there are lots of ways it can be. So I think we should either do a talk and a Q&A or a series specifically on communities and cities. And one of the things that makes a city unpleasant is so much of it is not for human beings at all, and unnecessarily so. I mean, it's a city could feel entirely like a park. It could feel like living in a fabulous park or garden. We devote too much of a city to structures and infrastructure that does not need to be on the surface. Anyway,
It was funny though, because when I was going to my eyeball making course, it was quite far away, so I had to get a lot of trains and go sort of quite far out. But even far out, when I was on the sort of monorail, I was just going past endless tower blocks, really, really grim Soviet-looking things, and I just thought, this is making me feel crap just looking at this. And then I thought, hang on, I lived in a building exactly like that for about 4 years when I first came here. And I thought, like, it's sad how quickly you get used to it. You know, just to look at, you think, ugh. But then if that's your life situation, if that's the only way you can afford to live in the center of a city, and even people who are incredibly wealthy live in buildings that look like that, you have to just get used to it. And then I thought, I'm sure whenever I had people visiting, they would have looked at the building I lived at and thought, ugh. But actually it's quite expensive considering what it was. It wasn't at the low, ironically at the lower end in Tokyo are all the old buildings because nobody wants to live in them.
I think we don't just have to live with it. Of course, pro tem we do, but ultimately we could demand better. And the acquiescence of us all to really grim, oppressive cities is strange. Because the architects who are building them think they're doing wonderful things. It just so happens they're not.
I think the aesthetics of it is a main point, just how ugly it is to look at.
Yes. It's oppressive and soul destroying, literally.
I think we
Really.
talked about this before. I don't know if we talked about this in a Q&A or something, and you were very dismissive of me and my brilliant idea, maybe because you'd heard it a lot. But I thought they make buildings like this, and I think Tokyo is a good example because whenever we think of Soviet architecture, we understand the ethos behind that, and we understand very obviously the mindset that they were trying to, inculcate in the people that had to live in those buildings. But I think it's exactly the same here. I think they want to build buildings that make people feel like they could never live independently of the state or an employer. Like if you think of like a little village house next to a stream with some apple trees, you can imagine someone, if they had to, living off the land and making do. But if you live in a huge tower block, you have to use the electricity, you have to use the gas, you can't forage in a tower block. And I think there's something a bit intentional about that. I think there's something of I there's something saying you can't be without us, you can't do without us, this is what you get, but you have to give us everything else, your time and your labor, for enough money to afford all the resources that you need, because you can't do it yourself if you live in a place like this. And I think that's one of the reasons it looks depressing as well, is because you get no sense of being able to survive. There's no sense that picks up, I can smell fruit, or I can see a body of water. There's nothing. And I think that's one of the reasons it's depressing for us. There's nothing to suggest we can survive there.
I think that's, it's interesting, because if you think about the origins of modern architecture, and it very much started with the Bauhaus and architects like Corbusier. Now, when I was a student, we were pretty much expected to treat Corbusier like a god. And many architects and many design students still do. But Corbusier was not interested in human beings as such. His architectural basically was human storage. And to the extent that he was making it for people, his philosophy was that everybody, the butcher, the baker, and the banker, should live in identical spaces. He was a communist. And what's weird about it is that an architecture that was basically developed around a communistic philosophy, which it was adopted wholesale by
elitists.
The capitalist world. It makes no sense. It really is appalling.
Often the most beautiful houses were made for peasants or miners or workers, or people who couldn't afford much, so it had to be made out of natural materials or brick or something like that in the good old days of yore.
Yeah, we'll do a session on architecture and community.
Yeah, it reminded me a little bit. So one thing I should say as well is one of the things about doing these at home is people are going to realize I have a life with other people in it, and one of them has just got home. 今ビデオ作ります。大丈夫です。ライブ、お父さんのウェブサイトから大丈夫です。あなた大丈夫。例えばあなたは大丈夫。私たちは大丈夫。大丈夫。
TV?
静かいいですか
You like?
Yeah. Sorry.
That's his mask.
Wearing his mask, yeah. Actually, but that was one of the things, like talking about cities and survivability and what feels good and like the sensual nature of living in a community or a space. One of the things that I found really interesting, and I want to know if you had the same experience, because I'm wearing a mask every day, all day outside, I'm not getting any sense of the season changing. I'm not getting any smells. And the other day, like, I was out running. I was out running and my nose was itchy, so I pulled my mask down and I suddenly got this waft of pine tree, and it was so lovely. It was so nice, and suddenly I felt like happier. I felt like really, like I was flooded with nostalgia. And one of the benefits of wearing masks all the time is people might appreciate what a hugely emotional and important sense smell is in a way that they haven't before.
Yes. I did a talk on pathways, and I have it as a slideshow. So I will see if I can do that. And it was about pathways in the country as well as urban pathways, the things we were talking about. How to make them safe and entertaining. Or entertaining and safe. Either emphasis, both are important. Okay.
Okay, so our next question is from Ed Kidera, and he says, Freya, I've truly enjoyed all of the shows you and your father have done. Thank you for sharing. I found this episode particularly interesting when Freya discussed being an artist. I have been a sculptor for 30 years in the US. I've made a reasonable living, but now with COVID, all the shows I would have done have been cancelled. I'm just going to try turning my volume up to see if that helps.
Oh, it helps me.
Huh?
Helps me.
Okay, cool. I've made a reasonable living, but now with COVID, all the shows I would have done are cancelled. We hear you, Ed. Seeing work on the internet is not the same as seeing it in person. My request is that you and your father discuss art seen in person versus art seen on a screen. Thanks.
Well, exactly the same has happened to us. Freya and I met up at the Los Angeles Modern and Contemporary Art Fair. It was in February, wasn't it? February.
January or February.
And that show we did, and we had 3 tours cancelled, one in Europe, 2 in the US, and maybe a dozen shows, all cancelled. So we're in exactly the same boat. And I love looking at art in any way, whether it's in a book or on a screen. It's all a wonderful experience. But there's nothing like being in a well done show where it's there physically, where you can actually be right up close. I love that.
I think, do you know what was really, I had a really weird experience with one of my colleagues at work, Patrick. We were talking about the first experience we'd ever had of art that made us feel like we suddenly understood what it was about. And we had the exact same experience. Both of us had gone to the Uffizi in Florence with our mums and been taken around the Uffizi, and both of us, and he said it first, so I know it's not a lie, that he was just agreeing with me, looking at the Botticelli paintings, particularly, what's her name? The spring dance one with, oh, fudge, I'll find it. But both of us just stood in that room with the Botticelli painting, staring for ages and ages and ages. Both of us had seen those paintings in pictures before, but both of us just couldn't move. And we just absolutely fell in love with it and thought, this is what it's for. This is that experience. And I don't know if on a screen that would have happened if someone had. So I guess the COVID challenge is going to be moving people emotionally without having to show them in their face something physical that you've made up close. So it might be that it's not paintings that would be the way that we kind of share art. It might be that we have to do things differently. Or it might be like with the course where you do it with someone, you make something with someone so they can experience that artwork through their own hand. So they are being taught by screen, but they are manifesting something themselves. That might be a way. I'm not plugging the course, I'm just saying. Although do sign up. Going live on the 7th of October. It's
Yes.
on the website to read the info now.
But, you know, I mean, showing is hard, but we have an exhibition in November. I have, at this moment, it hasn't been cancelled. The annual November-December exhibition I do at Trading Boundaries is still on. And in England, a lot of museums are open. I mean, it's a lot of pressure to keep social distancing and wear masks indoors and all that kind of stuff. But they are open, you can see them. So it's just a different way of doing it, but it's not a total block.
And actually, I think there's room for improvements because we went to see a kimono exhibition in Ueno, which is where all the big, massive museums are. And we've been quite a few times, and it's hell on earth. Like, you see some amazing art, but you have to look at the same piece for about half an hour because everyone just inches along a tiny bit at a time. And there'll be periods of time where you're just looking at a wall because you're just waiting to get to the next piece like this. And there's thousands and thousands of people there. But because of COVID, what they're doing now is booking in slots. So we went to see this kimono exhibition. There was so few people there. We got to see everything. I could read the descriptions of things, and then what I could do is I could look at something and then decide I'd had enough of looking at that and go across the room and look at something else. I have not had that experience before. And even better than that, I'm doing a talk with work, which I told you about, which is about the future of Japanese art. And for me and a lot of the other speakers, a big premise, we've talked about this before, is bringing Japanese history and religion and tea ceremony ways of experiencing art into the modern world in a contemporary gallery setting. How would you have that experience? And I went to an exhibition last week in Kyoto, which was in a temple. The artist had worked with the temple and built the exhibition into it. And so you couldn't have thousands of people, and it was a space where you sit and pray, but it was to art, and you sat in front of it, and there was like few people at a time. And I thought that might be a really wonderful way of doing things. If you limit numbers, if you stagger people, if you create spaces that they can sit down on a tatami floor or whatever the equivalent and spend time in a really like mindful, contemplative way, then maybe that would be a way of A, social distancing, and B, appreciating art in a way that people don't usually.
Yes. It's all worth rethinking and thinking very carefully about. I mean, obviously, one of our ambitions is to build our own visitor centre gallery, not just for our work, but for other people's work as well. And working out how to make it work optimally is going to be a fascinating process.
Yeah, I guess we haven't really addressed the screen thing now. I'm just thinking, I really enjoyed doing my Doll's House exhibition, where basically I teach kids, and we did loads of workshops online. They sent me JPEGs of their work, and I printed it out tiny and put it along the walls of my Doll's House. And basically in real life, there's no way we could have done an exhibition on that scale, you know, in different rooms and lots of pieces of their artwork. And because it was on a camera and on a screen, it made zero difference. It might as well have been in a huge gallery, but it was in a tiny Doll's House. So there are probably ways you can play with it, where if you're not too worried about that kind of emotional impact aspect, but you want to get across an exhibition or your work on screen, there are probably ways you can play with it on screen, which you can't. Like, I've been looking at, you know, our course, we want to do an exhibition of the students' work. I've been looking at virtual galleries, which would mean you can kind of put in artwork into this virtual space and then look around on your phone or on your computer. And that might be a fun way of doing it. If you built your own gallery online, make it look how you want. Maybe make it look like a Japanese temple and just put your own work in it and have online exhibitions like that. That might be cool, because that would be something you wouldn't be able to do in real life so easily.
There we go.
I'm answering all your questions, Dad. You need to say more, come up with better things to say.
I don't know how I can get a chance.
If you say it, I'll stop.
Go on then, we'll see.
Okay. Okay, so I like Kaya Chan's question. She says, I love how passionate you both are about a better world, but is there any way for little people like us to make a difference in what's unfortunately run by stiff city planners? How can we put passion into action? We're little people too, Kaya Chan. I think I'm the same height as you now, aren't I, Dad?
Oh, you look higher. You must be sitting on a high chair. I put my computer on a stand.
That's it.
I think, I don't know is the answer, but I think people should join groups that look at what planners do. Planners work in a vacuum. They make stunningly weird decisions. And we vote for governments, but planners tend to be organizations that aren't elected, and they make decisions on behalf of the rest of us. Planners, highways, all kinds of organizations within government are not elected. And we should protest. You want to chop down a forest to build a road? Argue your case, campaign. And if the architecture that's being proposed is mediocre, protest it. I think we should. We all have to live with it. And planners are trained in the same ideology that architects are, which is that minimalist, bland, corporate dullness.
But they also rely on the fact that getting involved in politics on a local level is so impotent and tedious, nobody bothers to do it. But if enough people figured out the system and got really annoying, they'd have to start. If you go to the council meetings and you make up petitions and you regularly sort of cause annoyance, clog up the gears, they'd have to start. Well, they'd at least have to start seeing that they're obviously beholden to people who won't let them just do whatever they want.
And the other thing I would say, especially in England, is planners are expert at dealing with this. There was a particularly awful proposal for Lewis, which was huge. It would have made a huge difference and massively inconvenienced everybody. And the planners were supposed to speak to people, and they spoke to dozens of small organizations. And they were able to argue different perspectives because each group had a different perspective. And there wasn't one coherent voice. So I think we need to learn how to protest about the appallingly dumb decisions organization.
I think getting together physically, even though at the moment it might be difficult, is a really important way of doing it as well, because I think it just really reinforces how people feel and bond and become a community, and B, it's not monitored. Like if you set up SNS groups or email chains, all of that can be overseen or hacked or got into or whatever, or shared. But if you're physically in a group together, someone might record what the group is saying, but ultimately there'll be so much content, you're going to build your own little culture without outside influence.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think art, it doesn't matter if art is crap because you don't have to look at it. You don't have to go and see a show if you don't like it. But architecture is in our face. The whole community has no choice. It's there whether we like it or not.
Do you know
so
what?
We have to learn to have a stronger voice. Sorry?
Sorry, I interrupted you.
Well, I'm kind of used to that.
That's a relief. Shall I carry on then?
Yes.
I was just going to say, I was listening to Caitlin Moran's new book, More Than a Woman, and she was sort of discussing her daughter's eating disorder and how sort of ubiquitous that is for young women. And I was listening to it while I was walking from the train station to my work, and I counted about 20 images of incredibly thin white women that I hadn't bought. It wasn't on TV, it wasn't in a magazine, just sort of unsolicited, had to look at them, because I was crossing a road or walking along. And I found that, and I thought, of course girls feel terrible about themselves if they don't have an eating disorder and look like that, because all of those women definitely do. And I just sort of thought, why isn't anyone doing anything about this? As you say, architecture is something we have to look at that can affect our mood, that we don't have a choice about. But posters are something really easy to take down or change or do something about. And yet it's the relentless imagery that it's abusive. It's abusive to women to have to look at this day in, day out. And I do, because I go to work every day, so I look at it every day.
The opposite is
on that.
no, I just thinking about the opposite of that was I was working in Moscow in the very end of the Gorbachev era, and Moscow is built like most Western cities, hugely wide boulevards, because the Tsars had no reason to not do anything other than on a hugely grand scale. But what was weird is there was no advertising. And you were suddenly aware there's no advertising anywhere. And it was kind of wonderful. It's also kind of weird. But yes. Anyway, let's go to the next question.
I mean, you know, sounds great. Let's go. Where did you say it was? No, I'm joking. So actually we fudged a question last time and the person asked us to do it again, and I'm trying to find it so we definitely don't miss that one. But we'll start with David Bagsby, because he's put Q for Friday, which is nostalgic when we used to do these regularly and on a Friday. He asks, will you have a mini lecture once the DBA sessions are complete, as you did with the architecture, perhaps a history of influential eras like Art Nouveau, the front cover vine framing of Yes songs come to mind?
Yes, I like that. Very weirdly, Freya, you brought me, when you came, did you bring or send me a catalogue of a MOOC exhibition in Tokyo?
I brought it.
Yes, and it had some of my work in it, it had some of Michael Kaluta's work in it, and it was basically saying we were influenced by Mucha, which is true. It was, both were a tribute to Mucha. And it's kind of sad that that ended, that the modern movement really ended any joy in design and architecture, in my view.
Good to have a palette cleanser, though.
Yeah, but the palette cleansers lasted 100 years, more. That incredibly austere Calvinistic approach to architecture and design has lasted 100 years, and it's way past its sell-by date.
Yeah, and it's sort of weird because I just don't understand this. I mean, you're always going on about it, but I really don't understand this thing. Like, I can't imagine anyone who I'd show two pictures of, like one of these kind of contemporary, very flashy Japanese sort of tower blocks, or a medieval thatched cottage. I cannot picture anyone choosing to live in this. Everyone wants, I mean, it's just more beautiful. I don't know. I just don't understand why. I don't know. Why don't people learn how to make things like they did in the Middle Ages?
They do. They know.
Why don't we have more of that then? I feel like I wish I disagreed with you more, because we'll be alienating a lot of people, I think, if we both agree on all of this. No, you're wrong. I want to live in a concrete block. And I do. Okay. This is the question we fudged last time. This is from Ian G. Freya, thanks for asking my questions. The first part of the green slate question got lost in the discussion. Sorry, Ian. It was whether Roger, we do that. It was whether Roger knows why he didn't do their Spyglass guest cover after having done the first two. I won't finish his question because I don't want to upset anyone that might like it. But yeah, why, do you know why you didn't do it?
No. When I was doing the publishing, it was very intense. And most years I managed to do 2 or 3 paintings. But when I was doing the publishing, that was a hard level of work to keep up with. And I did maybe 1 or 2 a year instead of 3 or 4 a year. So I was doing less, and I don't think it came into it. I just think Patrick was friends with David, or David was friends with Patrick, which was a good thing. I didn't feel disappointed that I didn't do it. Let's put it that way.
Kaya Chan has another question. I like Kaya's questions. Q&A. Roger, you've spoken before about healthy living. Can you talk a bit about that? For example, are you vegetarian or do you follow any certain diet?
I'm not really vegetarian, but I don't eat beef or pork. But I'm getting to the point now where I think I'd like to be totally vegetarian. I suppose 6 days a week I'm vegetarian, but I'd like to be 100%.
And you don't eat pork except for those sausage patties that you make every other day?
I only do when you're here. I haven't done since you've gone back.
It's funny, isn't it? Because like, I think we are quite healthy. I think you are quite like the food, the main food that you eat, you make, and it looks really good and stuff. But I think your idea of what you eat and what you really is a little bit different.
No doubt. No doubt.
Okay, move on. Okay. Sorry, I'm just ask David Bagsby's question.
I'll just make one comment. I do eat fish. And last night I was working and I turned the TV on and there was something on about a fishing competition. And there were 2 people in a photograph with large fish. And I was astounded at my incredibly angry reaction. I thought, my God, they're killing those beautiful creatures so they can weigh their dead bodies to see who won a competition. And I thought, that's not acceptable.
No, and actually I want to say something about that I learnt when I was working at the medical museum. Because I was overhearing some people talking about catch and release fishing and saying, you know, they let them all go. If you do that, the wound gets infected and they do die, but it just takes them a really long time. So don't do that either. Don't do that either. Like there's those really cool little magnet fish and plastic rods you can get. They're great fun. Pigeon shooting.
Get over it.
Yeah, but even the catch and release, it's really bad for them.
Yes.
So Jonathan Phillips asks, do all your paintings and architecture reflect your philosophy of building better cities?
A lot do. I don't know if they all do. A lot do. I would probably say no. Sometimes I do things that are dark, and it's interesting to explore that occasionally. So I would say by and large, yes, but not all.
That's a really interesting point, actually, because I was thinking about it. What was I thinking? I was thinking like, oh, people who are on a paleo diet are usually trying to get thin. But if you think about Paleolithic, like female shapes, they're all these sort of big, curvy Venuses. And then I thought, well, I suppose someone could argue that that might not be the ideal. They just made these very voluptuous women because that you know, that they weren't that interested for something. And then I thought, if you're an artist, it's not only the fact that you're disinclined, it's actually very difficult to intentionally make something you don't think is beautiful. Do you know what I mean? Particularly if it's a figure painting. I think people don't naturally draw bodies and figures to specifically highlight something they don't like. All of these Venus figurines, I can't imagine that the people who made them were doing them because they found that body type, you know, unappealing. And they don't look like that either. They look like someone really enjoyed making those shapes.
This is a difficult place to go to, because I remember I painted pictures like the octopus, which a lot of people said, oh my God, that's really spooky. But it was very popular, and I loved doing it. So yeah, I don't think we make everything. No, I definitely don't make everything as part of the propaganda. Sometimes something has to be a contrast to it. And I remember when I did that very painting that looked like hell for the cover of Guns, Race with the Devil. And I remember when I did the original painting, was this as a symbol, as a contrast to the kind of domestic safety that I was trying to make the architecture do. I needed a primeval contrast. And often you need that. It can't all be one flavor. It has to be.
But I don't think everyone finds the same things nice to look at or appealing or interesting. You know, I've talked before about when I was illustrating medical specimens. Some people had, you know, dramatic reactions, but I felt like my drawings were really beautiful. But different people find different things. I just think, what would it mean to intentionally make something ugly? And then even by painting it or creating it, it becomes something that you have touched with whatever skill that you have and made into something lovely in its own way. Even your octopus, you know, people love it and want it on their walls. It's not an ugly thing. I guess what I'm doing is I'm preempting people's arguments that those Venus figurines are somehow not adulation of the female form and its voluptuousness, as they might do, if you know what I mean. I'm just thinking, I don't see how someone could have made those and not felt like they looked fantastic.
It's definitely a yin yang thing, and you need both.
Mm.
Go on. I'm going to think about this while you ask another question.
Okay. So Mario Bet asks, will the typography and logo I saw on the albums DBA Skyscraper Souls and Live in England also be on this album cover? And how will the Kingfisher be incorporated in there?
Well, we did show a quick look of that. It's going to be the same font, but we have changed it. We have changed the D. So there are small changes. And the Kingfisher will be in front of it, not behind it.
Daniel Resco asks, could Roger please list some album covers by other artists and designers that he feels are among the best ever?
Well, I love Vaughan Oliver's work. I thought he was amazing. I love Rick Griffin, Kelly and Mouse, and those guys from the San Francisco era of the Summer of Love. I like Storm's work. Yeah, there's a whole bunch I like. Should I make a list and post it somewhere?
Yeah, I mean, like a lot of the questions that we get asked are like, what books do you like? What audiobooks are you listening to? That you'd recommend? What music? So maybe like you could have a little you know, Deaniverse page on the website where you sort of explain all the things that you like.
I'll have a look at doing
Bern Hunter asks, Roger done the 7-inch single cover for Don't Kill the Whale. Why did you do it in black and white?
that. I didn't do it.
Oh, well, there you go. Is it? Huh?
I don't think it's mine. I certainly didn't do it anyway. Even if it was based on my work, I didn't do it.
Dave Watkinson says, asks, is it doable to revisit a die-cut cover for maybe the Tithe? Oh, maybe the next Yes album cover.
I don't really, I would only do it if I thought there was a really good reason. And I haven't come across in my work a really good reason to go back to die-cut covers.
Why not? I think they're great.
Yeah, but they were all so easily damaged. Oh my God, we were going to look at the Earth and Fire album cover, weren't we?
I can't remember. Have you got it?
Yeah. Yes, I'm afraid that's going to have to wait another week to our next session.
Okay. Ernest Jr. asks, is there any chance of a reprint of the Roger Dean Dragon's Dream book?
It doesn't need a reprint, it's in print.
Oh, there you go, Ernest.
Available on the website. Before we finish, we've got to talk about the calendar.
Okay. Do you know how long we've been going? We've got...
About an hour.
Okay, so what I wanted to say and talk a little bit about, if nobody minds, is the fact that we're going live with the course on the 7th of October, and it will start on the 28th. That's right, isn't it?
Yes, that's right.
Could you just, so all the information is on the website, you can't book it yet. What I do want to say about that is the last course got booked up in hours. So if you really want to join, it's going to go live. We're going to try and do it at 7 p.m. English time on the 7th of October. So if you really want to join the course, then I would really recommend that you book as quickly as you can. And the information is there, but Dad, do you want to sort of give a little introduction to what it's going to be about, what you're going to be doing in this course?
Well, we're going to do some things the same. I'm going to not move away from the emphasis on getting that state of mind right, but we're going to do more about drawing, both pencil drawing and pen and ink drawing. And we're going to look at not the best way or the classic way of doing watercolors, but the way I did watercolors, albums like Relaya or Aisha's Alpha.
Was Tales from Topographic Oceans watercolor?
Yes. Yeah. So I'll be looking at the way I did those covers, which is a combination of drawing and coloring. I don't work that way anymore. So I'll also look at how I do treat watercolor nowadays, but I will also look at drawing.
And everyone who joins will be making their own piece of work based on a general landscape, real or imagined, and we'll be going through the steps. Dad will be going through the steps on how to build that up, right? Using watercolor and drawing. Yep, and how you do it, basically, it's the same as last time. If you haven't got a Facebook account and you want to join, you need to make a Facebook account, but it can be really private. You don't have to add anyone. You can make a really private Facebook account, only use it for this. But what we do is once you've signed up, I add you into the Facebook group. And then inside the Facebook group, where there'll only be 10 of you, once a week, Dad will do a live video where you can ask Dad questions, but he'll be showing you that week's assignment. And then for that week, you will work on your picture yourself and send it to Dad. Send just a JPEG or a picture from your phone. And then Dad will give a sort of feedback in the form of a video to everyone. He's really nice. He's not going to be mean or like pick anyone out and tell you you're terrible. It's just basically, so like often what happens is often people kind of make the same mistakes or fall into the same patterns. So feedbacks in a video form are just a way of sort of generally saying, okay, I've noticed that as a group so this is happening and maybe it's because I didn't do this. So it's a way of sort of just keeping moving, but you won't have a tough time. And we had a great time for the spring one, didn't we? And I think it's going to be really lovely this time. I know we've got 2 of our spring students who want to join for this one as well. So really get in there if you can.
I can show you the proofs of the new calendar.
You want to do this on the Q&A or after?
No, I'll show you now.
Oh yeah, go for it.
Okay, so that's the cover.
Oh, that's beautiful.
And
the a lot.
Whoops. So talking about paintings that are not things that I done because it's part of my idea of what's an ideal world. So it's about 2/3, I don't even know for sure. It's a mix of new works and old.
That's a lovely one.
These are old. This is not new or old, it's in the middle.
Where's my birthday month? Which one have you got for September? Oh, I like that. I haven't seen that before. June, nice.
September.
Well, you can go through chronologically if that's what you were doing.
Okay. July.
Nice, classic. Did I tell you I was watching Doc Martin the other day and the music teacher has that Osibisa poster on his wall in Doc Martin?
No. So this is August.
Oh, lovely.
And that's a new one. And this is September. So this is a time when I used as a painting architecture as I wanted to see it.
Mm.
And the cover is October. This is a weird one because this is November.
What's it? I haven't seen that version before.
No.
Wow.
It was done, and it's going to be in the Uriah Heep box set.
Oh.
And this which we did live.
Yeah. Well, there you go, everyone. If you were watching the live for that, there's a little memento. Is that the one where you did the cat? Was it Maddie Percy's cat is in there as well?
Gosh, yes, I think it is. Yeah, it's in the tree.
Nice.
Okay.
I want to do a talk where we talk about our ethos, because we've just set up the Dean School of Art, and we want to build this out. And having done my eyeball course and lots of kind of specialist courses like that, I've really got some ideas how I want this to kind of become. And I was imagining, I want to do this as a separate talk, but I just want to run this by you. I was sort of imagining the course like a pyramid. In Japan, there's this culture of education being very cloistered. Like if you are a geisha or a samurai or learning how to do sushi, you basically from childhood devote your entire life to it and you don't talk about how it's done.
Answer the door. You keep talking.
And the benefit of that is that some people become so extraordinarily good at something, they push the frontier of human capabilities. But because it's so secretive and so few people experience it, it's very, very narrow. And if you think about something as broad as sort of general state education, that's huge amounts of people going through the system. And what I kind of want to do, and I think, so I've put the Asia Pyramid as our website. It's not up yet, but the Asia Pyramid and a collage of that as the main image. Because what I want this school to be is frontiers being pushed at both levels. The top with the tutors who are absolute masters of what they do, but also this sort of foundation frontier of everyone coming up because of this knowledge being disseminated. It's the two front. What I'm saying is all of this sort of mastery of Japan is very secretive. So you get a very narrow kind of form of knowledge, but it's incredibly refined. Whereas what I want our school to be is those people teaching, but sharing that knowledge. So you get the frontier of human ability being pushed, as well as the general ability coming up as well, pulled by that top. So the way I imagine it is a pyramid, which is the image I used for the website, was that collage of our work, which has the Asia Pyramid in it. And that's kind of how I've been imagining it. I'm just thinking about this because I just want this to get much bigger and be able to include many more people, and like have a lot of free content as well, like you talking about the architecture and you know, those. Huh?
We'll do that not only inside the school, but generally, publicly.
Well, it will be public. I want the school to be like a hub, and there'll be things that you might have to pay for because it's just too difficult and complex a course to do, or we can find other ways, but lots of free stuff too, sort of some kind of combination of the Khan Academy and, you know, the Google masterclasses or whatever they are. So everyone can get something and we all get pulled up at whatever level you're at.
We need to wrap up for today because we've run over.
I've talked most of today.
I'll make sure next time I get Freya when she's a bit more tired.
Or make notes on better things to say yourself. I'm joking.
Oh, how do I know? I need to talk to you about some admin stuff afterwards. So.
Okay. Sorry, everyone, I talked so much. I will let Dad say more things next time.
Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
I've been talking all this time. I'd have lost my voice. I'm already...
You're welcome.
Okay. Thank you.